Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Jessie Cruikshank, and I've always been told I have a face for podcasting. So I launched a podcast. It's called Phone a Friend because each week I'll break down the biggest stories in pop culture. But when I have questions, I get to phone a friend. I'll phone a royal watcher to find out why Prince Harry is acting like a real housewife. I'll phone a tween to please explain Euphoria. And maybe I'll even phone a Backstreet Boy to find out if I still have a chance. I don't? Okay. New episodes drop every Thursday wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile, the podcast where we walk home from the movies. Today we're going to see a movie called The Suicide Squad.
What was the last one called?
It was called Suicide Squad.
Right,
So
okay.
this one is completely different. It has a preposition.
So many people
Is that
have
a
asked
preposition?
us. I don't know. So you're the one with the English degree.
No, it's a definitive article.
So many people have asked us to come and see this movie. We got so many messages about it. We did 2 Twitter polls, both of which overwhelmingly told us to go see Suicide Squad.
The
Suicide Squad.
Squad.
And then for reference, way back when, over 5 years ago now, when we started this podcast, early days, we reviewed
Suicide Squad.
Right?
Yes, we did. It's like episode 10 or 11 or something.
So
I
would actually shudder to go back and listen because
I'd love to go back and listen. It's probably quite rough.
I can't remember what we thought about
Like
it.
that
even.
movie.
What did we think of the movie?
You thought it was brilliant. You
Really?
thought, yeah.
Brilliant?
I remember. I'll never forget my complete surprise at your reaction to that. You really enjoyed it, and you said it was better than Captain America: Civil War.
I remember enjoying it
which was our second ever review.
because I'm a fan of like cartoonish violence and silliness in a superhero movie. So I do remember enjoying it for sure. I remember despising Jared Leto though.
Oh God, he was bad.
Is he in this one?
You ruined that
If
movie.
he's in this, I kind of don't want to watch it.
I don't think so. I mean, I can't say for sure. I don't know much about this.
And I'm not going to spoil anything, but he showed up as that character in something else we watched recently, and I
Yeah, that was the Zack
Sends shivers down my
Zack
spine.
Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah.
Well, it's a funny
Is that
thing.
a spoiler?
I think. Don't think so. That
Okay.
was heavily promoted
Right,
even
okay.
before the movie came out.
Shivers down my spine. But then neither of us have seen Harley Quinn's movie, which apparently was actually quite good.
Birds of Prey. So it does feel like, yeah, I think this is all within that same universe, indeed. So I guess he could totally show up. Who knows?
But Margot Robbie,
not.
or Margot Robbie, I'm not sure how to say her name. She's brilliant.
Is it
As
Robbie?
I don't know.
Okay.
Harley Quinn. So even though we didn't see her movie, we are big fans of her, and I would have watched it. I think it's just that it only came out on demand and like just never got around to it.
I remember thinking it was like, it just felt like squandered potential. Suicide Squad is what I remember of it. Felt like it had some really good ingredients, but just felt
But then
like
it had Jared Leto
really flat.
as the Joker.
I mean, yeah, it was really flat until he showed up, and then
you
it became
tell me?
really terrible.
Did you tell me something? I'm having a flashback now to that podcast, that movie. Okay, not safe for work, not safe for children, what I'm about to say.
Okay,
Did
warning.
you tell me? Did I have a fever dream that, like, you told me that to get in character for that movie, Jared Leto, like, sent, like, dirty condoms to his co-workers?
To his co-workers, yeah, to his castmates.
Did that actually happen?
Yes, it did. He was doing like mad stuff on set, and doing
that's, like,
stuff
even,
to
like,
send.
grosser.
Yeah, I know. It's like being a sort of an anarchist to stay in character. But like, what a fucking tool! Like, who wants to? You don't need. I'm sure Heath Ledger didn't have to do that. I'm
it's
sure
really,
Heath Ledger was a perfectly nice guy between takes.
It's also really interesting because, like, obviously Heath Ledger as Joker, unbelievable, right? Jack Nicholson as the Joker, amazing. And then, as much as I disliked the most recent Joker movie, obviously Joaquin Phoenix is incredible as the Joker.
He was great.
So, like, you've all these kind of, you've 3 incredibly iconic performances there.
And
then
Jared
in the middle,
Leto.
you've Jared Leto sending condoms to his co-workers.
with a tattoo saying "damaged" on his forehead, like in a sort of the exact opposite of subtext. What's the opposite of subtext? Text. Just text. Just write text on your forehead.
Well, right, damaged on your
explaining his character.
So funny. Anyway, that's the extent of what we know about this movie. I have seen a trailer, but I can't even remember it. But I have seen, like, enough people, a lot of our listeners, whom we of course trust because they're big movie buffs, messaging saying they really liked it. But then one guy messaged saying that he walked out of the cinema or wanted to walk out of the cinema. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Kathy, because I actually have that tweet to hand. This
Great.
genuinely wasn't planned. So Johnny O tweeted us at JOCNO5. Thanks, Johnny. He said, it is one of the
Johnny
worst...
5 is alive.
He's alive and he's tweeting us. And he tweeted us that it is one of the worst films I have ever seen. I don't know if that means I want to hear you slate it or if I want you to be spared the misery of watching it. So this is such a strong reaction, Johnny. I want to know if you're talking about Suicide Squad or The Suicide Squad. Is there a mix-up here?
Yeah, that feels like more of Suicide Squad review.
To be fair to him, you've written, should we go see Suicide Squad this weekend?
Oh!
So
sorry for the inaccuracy in the tweets, guys.
Maybe he fairly thinks you're thinking about the other one.
Anyway, let's go. Dying to go to the cinema as usual, of course. We've got our lovely babysitter Megan back in action, ready to babysit for us. And
let's do it. All the lawnmowers are out. Right, bye.
Bye.
Are you in or out? Good. Let's meet your team.
It's okay, I'm not okay.
Each member is chosen for his or her own completely unique set of abilities.
I need to feel the raindrops on my head, on my head.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. Had to go number 2.
Good to know.
Is this thing a dog?
A dog? What kind of dog do you think it is, mate?
I'm gonna go with Afghan hound.
Oh my god, is it a werewolf?
Yo, they sent me next to a werewolf! Yo, let me out!
Hey, he's not a werewolf, okay? He's a weasel. He's harmless. I mean, he's not harmless. He's killed 27 children, but, you know.
Your mission is to destroy every trace of something known only as Project Starfish. Any questions?
Starfish is a slang term for a butthole. Think there's any connection?
No.
Hi, we're back. We have seen The Suicide Squad. It is the definitive one. This is the one to watch.
Yeah, this is really actually the one to watch.
It's much better than the other. It's a vast improvement.
So good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Johnny, if this was the movie you were talking about. We have completely different opinions on it. As I mentioned, like in the intro, I do love cartoonish violence and like over-the-top movies, action movies. This was so funny. We were properly laughing throughout. The violence was brilliant. I thought, like, James Gunn brought all of his energy to this movie.
Yeah.
The music was so fun.
There will be no spoilers, by the way, if it's your
spoilers.
first time here, until we get to Spoiler Street.
Like, the characters were so fun. The action was so fun. The intro was not what I was expecting. The humour was just really, like, top notch, like proper funny. And yeah, I'm really surprised at how good this movie was.
Same. I had such a good time. I'm so glad we saw this at the cinema as well.
Same.
Just like had a beer and pizza, just kind of got into it, and it was just such a joy.
It was one thing I did
joyous.
notice though, is that
I
me and
loved
you
it.
were like properly laughing, and like not that many other people in the cinema were laughing.
Yeah, I did notice that as well.
Even at one point, you
are
went
we
to the...
are we just really obnoxious? Is that what that is, or do other people? Maybe Johnny really did hate this, and maybe people think it's the worst film ever made, and
it's just so like a movie not to be taken seriously, right? It's like pure silliness, and if I think I can see why if you're not in the right in the mindset for this movie, you would hate it. Whereas if you're just pumped for like silliness and action and violence and ridiculousness, and you're on the James Gunn like humour train, and it's an interesting one because in real life James Gunn obviously got in really big trouble and was pulled off Guardians of the Galaxy because of his old offensive tweets, which were offensive and not funny at all, and I really disliked them. But his humour in the movie, how he pulls it all together, it's very funny how he cuts scenes and characters speaking and the music, and just like it all works. Anyway, big fan. I'm so glad we saw it. What a laugh.
Oh my god, it was so much fun. I think you said it right, like energy. It's got so much energy, but like it doesn't really let up for most of the movie, but like it didn't, like, you know the way we come out of movies so often lately, I feel like we always on this podcast say that was like half an hour too long.
Jungle Cruise, an hour too long.
Jungle Cruise, like it's just like this I could have spent another half hour
Yeah,
with another
same.
20 minutes, which means
It's tight.
really that it's the perfect length.
Yeah.
So it is, and I don't know what length it was or duration, but it was just moved at a clip from the second it started.
Yeah.
As you said, that intro, you just like, he sets the and we'll talk about it more in spoilers, but he sets the table so well and the stakes for the rest of the movie, and then just manages to somehow keep it going
It's
from
quite
there.
shock. Like there's
it's
good shocks in it, right?
like I felt like in the first one, and it actually genuinely feels unfair to compare these two movies, but it's impossible not to.
I mean, you have to compare because
But
they
they are
still
in
have Margot
different
Robbie.
leagues. They're in different leagues. Like the other one
It's
felt
the same
like
through character.
it was just plodding. Yeah, oh yeah, no, but the other one just felt like I was never motivated. I felt there was no real drive or motivation in any of that. Stuff was just happening.
I think,
whereas
like,
in
when
this, it's just like, I feel like, Jesus Christ, it's just like this is moving at a clip and I'm trying to keep up with it.
And it felt really
I loved it.
fresh because I was thinking, oh, he's done Guardians of the Galaxy, which I was a huge fan of when it first came out. Like, I really found that movie very funny. And I've obviously seen all the Marvel and DC movies because I'm married to Dave. This, in that crowded genre of like dozens and dozens and dozens of movies, feels so fresh. And I think that's almost like an impossible task.
And I think you're right.
It feels like a James Gunn movie, but he is not aping Guardians of the Galaxy, and that had been my concern, that like it might be too much down the Guardians of the Galaxy road.
Well,
and isn't.
it's got the same.
You'd know it was the same.
It was
director.
definitely at risk of being the same thing, in that it's largely boils down to a team of eclectic individuals who shouldn't work together.
Some of whom
kind
are
of
not
bouncing
human.
off each other. Yeah, so
It even has the same guy.
Yeah, Michael Rooker is in both. So it kind of was at risk of being the same. But no, you're right, fresh. It doesn't feel like that at all. It feels entirely different, while also having that same, what he brings it to it is that, as you say, that sense of humor, that confidence, the stylishness as well. This is really stylish.
It's really stylish.
Even like to the point to the. It does really interesting thing with like time graphics and time interstitials, and like almost like a graphic novel. It like punctuates its acts with names like the mission and all these kind of things. And I think that's done in a really arty way.
I hate to talk about this because I have to clarify this by saying I don't really remember the last movie, but I feel like Margot Robbie is like much less sexualized in this movie. That's just a feeling I had looking at it. She's just like obviously she's a beautiful woman, but like that's not at all the focus of her character, and I feel like that might have been more of the focus last time. I also just was reminded of how good Margot Robbie is. Like, what a great actress she is. We also had Joel Kinnaman in it, who we love, and we're actually currently watching For All Mankind over on Apple TV Plus, which we've talked about on our Patreon.
And he's also in both movies. And
he's in Guardians of the Galaxy.
No, he's in Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad. He's another through.
Joel Kinnaman?
Yes.
Oh, don't remember him.
So he's like the main guy in the first one.
But did we we never knew we needed to see Idris Elba and Viola Davis on screen together.
Oh wow,
until we got
the energy in that room was something else.
They're like, honestly, to me, two of the best actors in the world.
Yeah.
So to see them on screen together was like, it actually gave me shivers, and I just fucking love that whole sequence with those two.
And Idris Elba is a delight.
Oh, he's such a good actor, and he should be the lead. Like when he's in Thor and he's like a side character.
Oh, he's wasted in there.
What do you do? Like, why was Idris Elba in those movies?
Yeah.
Obviously, from his sake, he got paid loads of money. Why not be in it?
To be fair, I think that came out in 2011. I think his star power probably wasn't as big.
Yeah, but he
as in the
still
first
was
Thor.
in like Luther. At
they
that
didn't
point.
they didn't really make good use out of him, and this movie really does.
He's an interesting character and actor because he's such a great actor, right? He's incredible. We know that. Of course, we are obsessed with him from The Wire. But like, he's actually not often like the leading man in a movie. So this is probably the most prominent movie role I've ever seen him in. I think he's more of a leading man in TV. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So I just loved him, his energy. Like, I feel like he could have chemistry with a brick wall.
Oh my God.
Like,
But
anyone he's in a scene with, he just elevates everyone around him.
He and John Cena were bouncing off each other really well.
Oh my God, John, I love him.
John Cena, sorry.
John Cena, and
John
we love
Cena is excellent in this.
John Cena like made Fast and the Furious 9, and he makes this movie.
I don't think so. We are disagreed on that when we watched that, and there's no spoilers for that.
F9.
But I feel like he was the wrong casting for that movie.
No, I loved him in that movie
because he is a comedic action hero.
Yeah, but Fast 9 is a
And
comedy.
I think he will.
'Cause
He
it's
will
such a joke.
come to the fore if he returns in those movies
Fast
under different
9.
circumstances. But as a villain, he was not able to bring the cold, die-hard villain
there are
aspect
no
that Charlize
villains.
Theron can do.
There are no villains in Fast and the Furious movies. Anyway.
There are only heroes in waiting.
Yeah. Anyway, park that. Go and listen to
But
F9
here he is perfectly
So
cast
funny.
as this sort of misguided. He's called the Peacemaker, and he's this sort of misguided superhero who's just so by the book that but incredibly violent but has no room for black and white.
He's
and
called
actually,
the
I feel like
Peacemaker, right?
Peacemaker.
Can
Yeah.
I just do a total aside here for a second?
Yeah.
So if anyone's looking for a podcast recommendation, I recently got obsessed with
This is really quite
a
an
podcast
aside. What's
called-
happening?
A podcast called Welcome to Your Fantasy. Honestly, and I include our podcast in this, it's probably the best podcast I've ever listened to. All about the Chippendales
Oh,
in the 80s.
God, I
Dave's
can't
heard me
listen
talk
to you
about
talk
them a
about
lot.
this again.
So for like a week's period, I binged on Welcome to Your Fantasy, which is like unbelievably fascinating about the like rise of the Chippendales, including like murders and all these crazy things that happened during the Chippendales. Anyway, I got obsessed with Chippendales for a while, followed them on Instagram, etc. John Cena, he is like the ultimate Chippendale. He's exactly what those Chippendales look like, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's
there's
got
a
that
scene
whole
where
look about him.
he's just wearing tighty whities in this movie,
No,
and
there
it's
isn't. Is
quite it's quite
I mean,
impressive.
it's obviously fake, presumably. But anyway, total aside, listen
I mean,
to...
I'm sorry, I wasn't talking about his dick. I think you were talking about his like chiseled
No, his whole
body,
his
right?
whole face.
Oh, his whole thing, yeah.
Everything about him. So go listen to Welcome to Your Fantasy, and then John Cena should have been a Chippendale. And now back
Yeah.
to the movie
Okay,
again.
thanks for that aside. This episode was brought to you by another podcast.
He is such good chemistry with everyone as well. And there's like kind of a ragtag group of people, including like a shark whose voice...
Well, I was going to say, we
by
haven't even
Sylvester
talked
Stallone.
about the shark played by Sylvester Stallone. It's like there's so much happening in here.
shark.
Or
This is-
Polka Dot Man and Nathan Fillion, he's in this. Michael Rooker. There's loads of people. There's just so much to do to talk about here. So I think we should just go to Spoiler Street. What do you think? And just say that we highly recommend watching
highly
this because
recommend.
it's a
But
feast.
can we just briefly 1 second talk about the fact that, because this isn't a spoiler, like his name is in the credits and the ads and stuff. Sylvester Stallone voices a shark.
Yeah.
This is exactly the move
Who
that
steals? Yeah, go on. Sorry.
James. God, what's his name?
James Gunn did with
James Gunn
Vin
did with
Diesel
Vin
and
Diesel
Groot.
and
Yeah,
Groot.
it
Like,
feels like that.
This
yeah.
is just a flex, right? This is, look, I'm going to show you how much money I have that I can pay a really famous actor to basically
Say like if he's got like 10 lines,
10
in
lines,
the whole
if
movie.
that.
Yeah.
And actually, it's unrecognisable. It's not even like you'd listen and go, oh my god, that's Sylvester
But
Stallone.
I still feel like Sylvester Stallone brought it. Like
He
Vin
did
Diesel
bring
did
it.
for Groot. Like he brought it.
But anyway, it's just, to me, it's just such a flex. And I love that he's just like,
Yeah.
that he is doing that.
Scene
just funny.
stealing character in a crowd of scene stealing characters.
Yeah, like
right? I
the
mean,
shark is Groot, basically. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. There is definitely...
but like
Yeah.
to the point we said earlier, it's at risk of just being a Groot again, but kind of feels different enough.
Yeah.
And is playing off some different kind of jokes in there.
Yeah.
Um,
But anyway, let's get to Spoiler Street for The Suicide Squad.
yes, starting from now.
But-
also spoilers for Suicide Squad. Why not?
Also-
just both Suicide Squad spoilers.
Before spoilers, though, shouldn't we do our Patreon channel?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, a big thank you to all of our new Patreon members recently. So if you don't already know, we have a Patreon page called patreon.com/The Cinemile, and it's called the Cinemile High Club. And for the price of only £2 or £3 a month, you get access to a whole extra podcast feed, which we do with retro movie reviews and TV reviews. So we talk about what we've been watching. So we just did an episode on Schmigadoon and Ted Lasso and Apple Plus. And there's a... you can suggest what movie you want us to watch next. So this month is classic sci-fi movies. So
Yeah.
if you want to join up and suggest some classic sci-fi movies for us to watch, head over there, just like these lovely people did. So thank you to Ariane, to Brett Williams, to Jeremiah S. Pam.
Love it.
What an awesome name. To Laura Littler, could be a superhero. It could be like Ant-Man's
Yeah, 100%.
in that universe.
She could be Wasp's little sister.
Yeah, Laura Littler. It's a great name. And to Heather Knight. Also, she'd be in the DC the Dark Knight universe.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Even spelt like that with the K and everything. So yeah, wow, good job on having all those names, everyone, and good job on joining up the Cinemile High Club. Patreon.com/the Cinemile. And thank you.
Nice.
Right, so here we are.
Spoiling both Suicide Squads.
Yeah.
How
about that Suicide Squad?
That intro?
So the
where this
intro,
movie-
yeah. Let's talk about that because
this is where I knew I'm in a pair of safe hands with this movie. Because the intro was handled so well and was a genuine twist within the first 15 minutes of the movie.
And do you know? Have you seen any of the marketing material for this?
I'd seen the trailer.
So yeah, so you'd seen that they basically most of the trailer is in that opening or a lot of it, and they marketed all those characters really heavily.
Clever.
Like there's posters for Michael Rooker and the Weasel and Nathan Fillion's in this, who's a good friend of James Gunn.
Who was he?
Going back, because they made Slither together.
Who was he in this?
He was the TDK, the dismemberment
funny.
kid.
I mean, I
And
wouldn't
his
be
arms came off
how
and
could I
just
have known that was him?
started slapping.
And like the Weasel, like they basically set up all these characters and then they all died. And I was like, what am I watching? I know it's called the Suicide Squad, but wow.
Isn't that perfect? It's like the one thing that the first Suicide Squad was missing was the fact that they were disposable and none of that, and they were literally sent in as cannon fodder by
and there's even like they set it
Viola
up really
Davis.
well where like we actively like saw Viola Davis going and like recruiting a guy who's the guy who's also in Guardians of the Galaxy, can't remember his name, the really long
Michael
white hair.
Rooker, who was
and
we get this,
him.
but we start the movie on him in this awesome little thing where it shows you his like he's got perfect precision, you know, with all these X's in the wall, and they set up his superpower, and you're like, whoa, can't wait for him to use that.
And she says like,
that
we're going to
never
put
happens.
this chip
He
in your
just
brain.
dies.
We're going to put a chip in your brain, and if you don't do what we say, you're going to explode it. And you're like, oh yeah, they obviously won't do that. No, he's gone.
Yeah.
That was
This
so
is, like,
good. Then
so
the whole
clever.
squad basically fails except for Joel Kinnaman and Margot Robbie, and then it like pans out, and it turns out that like that squad was just the diversion from the real squad.
Yeah.
That is so fun, and I love that kind of tactical stuff as well.
Because it tells you, all right, first of all, it shows you how big the stakes are for this mission. It shows you how difficult the mission is. It shows you how they are actually a Suicide Squad that Viola Davis does not give two shits about.
Viola Davis is cold in this movie. Like,
and
she
they're taking
threatens
bets.
to.
Like everyone's just making bets on them. They are literally disposable. Which
kind of felt like the Running Man, you know, where they take the convicts in the Running Man and just send them all in to kind of kill each other.
It's really dark, and they make a gag out of it. And I think that's this movie's strength. He leans into the dark stuff and somehow finds humor.
Like she's basically saying to Idris Elba, like, I'm gonna get your daughter put in prison and killed if you don't go on this mission. And she's not joking because her colleagues are horrified, and she's like, yeah, and what's your problem?
She's
and then we meet the daughter who's so sweet and like just desperately wants her dad's attention and affection.
Another cracking scene.
Yeah.
Her and Idris Elba shouting at each other through the glass.
And that's only again in like the first 20 minutes of this movie. So like all that happens, and then the real mission starts. So the pace is just so good. Like there's no lag, and it also I thought it was really interesting how they actually benched Harley Quinn for quite a while, and then when we come back to Harley Quinn, we were reminded
she gets a lot of the movie
of how
then in the
cool
middle.
she is, and like there's also, you know, like an interesting line in there because we knew I vaguely started remembering as we were watching it, like in the original movie she's in some form of like abusive relationship with
Joker.
The Joker, and then in this you actually missed
And that's
the scene.
kind of canonical, I think, in the comics. Like that's, you know,
But you missed the scene because you went to the bathroom. But she basically is like, this guy wants to marry her to be like a powerful couple, and then he kind of does this kind of villain monologue where he talks about killing kids, and like she shoots him, and it's humorous the way they've done it. Right? And she says like, I always said the next time I see a red flag, I'm going to end the relationship, and she kills him. But then she says. She starts talking about basically, you know, situations where partners are being like abused and gaslit by their partners, because she said like, you know, one minute he's telling you that the music you like isn't really even music, and then the next minute blah blah blah, and she's talking about stuff that's been done to her, and that was actually made me like really relate, like really sympathise with her as a character, kind of a sense of like the damage that she's been put through by men as well. But then next minute she's like fucking psychotic and she's going around killing everyone. So like it felt like a better use of her than in the first movie.
Yeah.
Like her character just felt way better, and it actually has made me almost tempted to go and watch Birds of Prey.
The problem is the movie doesn't really address her relationship with Joker, the first one, except that he kind of rescues her in the end, and then she rescues him again. So it's kind of like,
weird.
That's not a character arc. She just continues to be in abusive
But that's why I think we need to maybe see Birds of Prey.
Yeah, maybe that does credit to it.
But that scene where she gets out of jail and she starts by
it's so good, and
she starts by getting the key in her toe and unlocking the thing, and she just goes through with this.
It's absurd, but it's really enjoyable
so
and so well choreographed. And I loved all the little flourishes, like it pans in, it goes in on her face, and she looks just terrifying, but also kind of scared, and she's not really enjoying the violence, but she kind of is. And then all the flowers are erupting behind her.
That was class.
All these graphical elements.
And I love the constant throughout where she had this like.
Your man's javelin. Yeah, there's so many great running
really
gags
good,
through this. Like, she gets it from the beginning. And
they also did in the movie at all of like not trying to, I mean, obviously, as I said, like, we appreciate she's a beautiful woman, but like the movie isn't trying to do that. Like, she's quite hideous throughout the whole movie, the way her makeup's done, and like when she's put in that red dress, like it's all quite freaky what they've done with her, and I really appreciated it. Like, I thought it was so cool, and like I loved her kind of the relationship with Joel Kinnaman. I loved the really funny gag where like she doesn't even know who Idris Elba is. Like the fact that like they're kind of partnered up together, but like the Milton thing,
the whole
was so
Milton
funny.
thing. There's so much funny
really
stuff.
These
in here.
characters are all out for themselves. It doesn't really make sense that they would have connected, but I thought they did it well with the rat girl and how she kind of briefly talks about her dad, and then Idris Elba's thinking about his daughter, and like those two connected a little bit in that one scene on the bus.
The one scene in the bus was one of the few breathing points, followed by the bar scene, and the movie's so economical in its sort of character building and making you care for the characters. Like you say, I do care for Ratcatcher number 2, just based on the brief thing we saw of Taika Waititi, who showed up as her dad.
Did you get vibes of that Scorsese movie? Remember with the little kid who used to be up the top of a tower?
Yeah, Hugo. Yeah,
really
very,
like Hugo,
very good. Yeah, you're right. And then I did care for the polka dot guy for whatever reason, because they give you a little glimpse into the horror of his childhood, and I did care for Joel Kinnaman.
Mommy, I'm a superhero, and then he was
I cared for Joel Kinnaman's character and the sort of what he eventually decides to do, which felt like it went against everything he stood for, and then and ultimately it was so clever the writing to put him against Pacemaker, and that inherent conflict of sort of what's right for America versus what's just right.
Yeah,
do you know? And
really
it's just
did.
like, so I found that whole conflict quite interesting.
Really good. And then like my complaint of like pretty much every Marvel movie is that like in the last act there's always like an incredibly long and boring action scene.
Yeah.
This movie had the big action scene at the end, but it wasn't boring. The office building collapsing was the huge building collapsing, and all that they were doing around that, and all that was happening in that, I couldn't take my eyes off it. And then as the giant starfish was going through the city, and it was like simultaneously horrifying and hilarious, that I was with every second of the movie.
But it was played so well.
It's just the direction is so good in this movie.
But giving them like the motivation and the sort of drive as a team to do the right thing and to disobey orders by saving the world.
And Viola Davis
I love
trying to
that
kill
idea.
them all.
Yeah.
And then I also really like there's so much humour in this, like the bit where it cuts to the shark and he's like trying to talk in the walkie-talkie, or like,
oh my god, Bird.
All the little starfishes.
They used him for so many good punchlines.
He was used so
but
well.
also I kind of cared about him. Like they managed to just the small little thing of having him not having any friends and not knowing what a friend was.
You notice that he was like essentially like the mental equivalent of Elliot, our 1.5-year-old. Like he seemed very much in that mental age, because at one point then Joel Kinnaman goes, "Shark, a starfish is num-nums," and then he goes and that's like our son Elliot. If there's a snack in front of him, like he will do anything to get to that snack. And I just think it was so cool as well, the creature design of when the starfish goes in everyone's faces.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And the guy from Doctor Who had those freaky tubes on his head.
Yeah.
Enjoyed him. I just love that kind of the big villain in the end was Viola Davis, and like I love when her team member hit her over the head, because
but there's so many villains. They're all villains. The heroes are villains. The villains are villains. Everyone's just shades of villain.
And even the royal family that was like gotten rid of, they were awful, because they were basically doing these Nazi experiments.
Yeah.
Like
anyway, there's no
so
really redeemable character, but there's people who you root for and ultimately do the right thing through monstrous methods.
Yeah.
And they are. It's incredibly violent. It's gory, I think it made good use of that.
Yeah,
also
like this is not a movie to show children.
Do you know
not
what
a movie to watch
No,
if you're in a bad mood. I'd say like you need to be in a certain mood for this because it's like of course it's very violent. and graphic.
There's an art to violence, and there's an art to on-screen violence. I mean, and fantasy violence, and there's also an art to swearing, which I really appreciated in this movie, both in writing and when to swear and the delivery of it, because you don't notice. That you don't notice how careful you have to insert swear words until it's done wrong. And I always come back to the White House Has Fallen.
I knew you were going to say that.
Jared Butler. Like
yeah.
a Jared Butler. And that movie had every third word was fuck or fucking. And it didn't work. It didn't land. But you like James Gunn writes the words in like swear words in like poetry. They feel like perfectly like blended and sparing.
Like when you just have like, oh, this movie's an R-rated, so we can just curse all the time. It's like, that's meaningless. Like
meaningless, and the violence in the Jared Butler things are just meaningless as well. Like
I have to say, my other lovely version of when swear words are used brilliantly is in one of the later bad Die Hard movies. It ended up being like a 12 rating. And when he says his famous line of "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," Bruce Willis goes "Yippee-ki-yay, mother," and then there's an explosion. And I thought I really enjoyed that. We get the line. You didn't need the swear word in there.
I know, but that's also
fun.
That's also just not misunderstanding what Die Hard is and what it started in.
I said it was a really bad movie.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that was like a fun way, but like I just think I'm really impressed by this movie. I'm glad James Gunn came on board. We don't endorse his previous tweets. But we do, like, he's great in this movie. And, like, if you don't like Suicide Squad, you may like The Suicide Squad.
I think to tie it in with his controversy, I with you that, and I think everyone would look at those tweets as they were presented in one go and just say that is poor. That's disgusting. It's poor taste. It's entirely inappropriate and not funny. And I think. But however, I think he got his roots are in shock filmmaking, right? He came up through the Trauma films, which were just like these Roger Corman level like B movies from the 80s and 90s, right? The Toxic Avenger and all these kind of things. And that kind of, I think he somehow has kept that feel through, even right up to this. Like he's all about, like, and this is him gone mad with a budget with that stuff, where it's all is just kind of shock value and... But I think because he's matured and grown up as well, it's not just... It is still relatively juvenile humour, but it's not just gross or shock humour for the sake of it. It feels perfectly balanced with character, with comedy, with violence, with just some moments are quite disturbing, I think. And actually, I was just invested in the stakes. I was invested in the stakes of the plot in general and the MacGuffin. I thought the villain... The sort of starfish creature seemed really scary and a real threat, and I was invested in them defeating it, and I was invested in all of their individual plots. And I was quite sad when, like, Polka Dot Man gets a starfish death.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like...
But when he saw the starfish,
he
like,
wasn't
that guy,
disposable to me.
The starfish turned into his mum.
Yeah, I know.
Funny,
I mean,
like, can I just say in my defence, when I... apparently 5 years ago said I really liked the first movie, but now I probably don't stand by that review. I think it's because we, in the same... few days, watched Captain America and Suicide Squad, and I really disliked Captain America because it was so po-facing up his own arse. And I think what I enjoyed about that one was that, like, it wasn't that, because this is what I want from comic book movies. I don't want like huge seriousness. So this is, even though I'm sure if I'm back and watch that first movie or heard my own review, I'd be embarrassed.
I'll say to the credit of the first movie, I agree. I think it's like it didn't really land, and apparently David Ayer, the director of that movie, wasn't happy with his experience or with what was finally produced.
They always say that, though. They blame the studio execs, and it's like, yeah, you can.
And
say,
I don't know how much of that is true.
If it didn't flop, you probably wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, maybe. But I think that certainly the attempt at the tone of that movie was what you're describing, of sort of silly, fun, light-hearted sort of energy. But it is just like it's on steroids.
I feel like it's a real turnaround for DC, because have you read about the new movie, the multiverse movie that's going to have Michael Keaton in it playing Batman?
Yeah.
Like I feel like DC is going in an interesting way now.
Isn't it? It's the Flash.
I can't remember remember which one it is because
Yeah.
I was just interested that he was going to play the original Batman in. But I feel like they're having a real turnaround again, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens along with Marvel's like renaissance of like all these TV shows. It's just like
multiverses are hot
this
right
is
now.
what I mean about how I'm amazed this movie felt fresh in such a crowded landscape.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the way WandaVision was so fresh and we weren't expecting anything from the Disney TV output, and then
You
they
can
came along
still-
with WandaVision.
You can still wring like inventiveness out of these stale properties, but I
Yeah.
also like this took. And I'm not a big comic book guy, so I don't know the details. But these are clearly all DC comic characters. Everybody on screen, you'd imagine.
Yeah.
And I felt like it very cleverly like reached into the vault of like obscure characters,
Like the Weasel,
and the fucking
And then at the
Javelin
end, the
Man, and
Weasel
all
got-
this kind of stuff.
I just
And
remember the end of the movie, the Weasel got up again.
yeah, how funny! Just again, like what I mean about like taking humor in something horrific. Like they have him like drown, like a creature drowns in the first 5 minutes, and it's like awful, and you're kind of watching a creature drown, but it's also funny.
But also,
and I mean,
no one rescued. I love when someone goes, "No one checked if the Weasel could swim."
I mean, I'm laughing now, but it's actually it's like,
But then the guy who ended up dying with the long white hair goes like, "Oh my god, what a bunch of amateurs!" And then 2 seconds later, he's like, "Ah!" He starts swimming
I
away.
know.
Anyway, we have to go. We have to wrap up. But thank you
So
everyone
much
who
fun.
said we should go and see it. We really appreciate it. And if you really hated it, get on contact with us on like @theCinemile on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or thecinemile@gmail.com, and let us know your thoughts, because we love chatting about these kind of movies. And as Dave said earlier, head over to our Patreon. And next up, we are going to do a big full season spoiler review of The White Lotus. So stay tuned for that on Patreon.
yes, we're enjoying that.
Yeah.
One. Okay, bye.
Ratatouille, what do you got?
Bird.
Now it. Stay off the comm.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
Hey, I'm Kim Holderness.
And I'm Ben Holderness.
We host the Holderness Family Podcast every Tuesday.
You may know us from the silly videos that we make online.
Or a book about marriage called Everybody Fights.
Or as winners of season 33 of The Amazing Race.
Still can't believe that happened. Listen, we do a lot of stuff, but our podcast is our most favorite thing.
Yeah, because every week we get to sit down face to face, talk to each other about marriage, family, mental health, or just anything that we want to know more about.
Sometimes we have expert interviews, sometimes it's just us, but our goal is to bring some joy and laughter into your life every week.
Our other goal is that maybe you will learn something as well.
Right, so search the Holderness Family Podcast and check out our most recent episodes. We have one about staying organized with creators of the Home Edit.
And one about being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult.
We hope you'll join us.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.